Everybody. Good morning from those who are in the Midwest, on the mountain, and in the West Coast. Thank you for joining us. One of the benefits of the pandemic has been our ability to do training and to reach out to our clients and friends through webinars and sessions like this. It's probably one of those things that will survive in a post-pandemic world, especially as Withum is concerned. So I could take this opportunity to, number one, welcome you to my house. Here I am in beautiful Manasquan, New Jersey. It's a beautiful day, and we're looking forward to our great session that we're going to have today. Before I introduce the keynote speaker, our session after that is going to be a federal tax update. Our own Dan Mayo has been following what's going on with the Build Back Better bills, and that are winding its way through Congress, is really going to be able to help you understand where we are and how to plan whatever your contingency plan needs to be as we're sitting here towards the end of the year on November 9th. And then we're going to have emerging trends on state and local tax, and featuring a couple of our partners who you've heard from before, Jim Bartek and Barry Horowitz. And then one of our newest partners, the young lady named Becky Stidham from our California office. Then we're going to do a wide world of business, which is an international focus session, and then another state and local tax, which will be broken up into two breakout rooms. So I hope you enjoy the day. Our speaker today is somebody that we were introduced to and came to address our partner group back in 2016. We were thinking about, what should our journey be along the path of innovation? And we asked Josh to come out and speak with us and to begin to sow the seeds that we need in order to grow and prosper. And I will tell you, 5 years later, our firm is doing an incredible amount of work in this area, and it's one of the things that makes us different. He has been a founder and a CEO of 5 tech companies, and he has sold them for a combined value of over $200 million. He's an author of a number of books. Discipline and Draining and The Road to Reinvention are two that I've read, and I've recently just picked up his book, Big Little Breakthroughs. It's definitely something you want to try to take a look at. He's founding partner of the Detroit Venture Partners and is involved in the launch of over 100 startups. And he's chairman of Platypus Labs, an innovation research, training, and consulting firm, and has twice been named Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, recipient of the United States Presidential Champion of Change Award. Passionate Detroiter, father of 4, professional lover, jazz guitarist, and has an odd obsession for greasy pizza. You've got to come out to Jersey and have some of the different pizza we have here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Josh Linkner.
Bill, thank you so much, and what a pleasure to be with everybody here today. It's wonderful to reconnect with you, actually, and see the great progress that you're making with respect to innovation across the firm. So as we get together today, welcome everybody. And I know we've got a lot of financial people on the call, CFOs and such. You might be wondering, what's the role that creativity, innovation plays in CFOing? Do those things even belong together? And I would suggest to you that we really have a profound opportunity, not to be creative in the break the law sense, of course not, but to be creative in the sense to read between the lines, to be able to become better leaders, better decision makers, and ultimately enable our organizations to thrive. So today I'm going to actually go ahead and share my screen here, and I've got some content that I think is going to be helpful to you as you think about innovation in your own organizations. So Bill mentioned I just wrote a book called Big Little Breakthroughs, How Small Everyday Innovations Drive Oversized Results. And the whole goal of it is to focus on how can we normal people be innovative? How can we, instead of these swing for the fences, wildly risky moonshots, can we cultivate daily acts of small little baby creativity as a more pragmatic approach to driving innovation? Well, our story begins today with a gentleman named Jesse Cole. Jesse was 23 years old, flat broke. But Jesse had this dream. Actually, it was more like a fantasy. His dream seemed so unlikely, but one day he wanted to own a professional sports team. Problem is, he wasn't the descendant of billionaires. This seemed very unlikely. Until he learned that in Savannah, Georgia, 1,000 miles from his home, the minor league baseball team was going through a bankruptcy. So Jesse gets in his rusted out old car, drives 1,000 miles to Savannah, Georgia, shows up at the bankruptcy hearing. He's the only one that shows up. So at this point, the city manager didn't know what to do. They actually gave the kid a shot. So now here's 23-year-old Jesse Cole with no plans, no capital, has to figure out what to do with this team. Well, what he does is remarkable. This crumbling stadium where only a couple people would show up to every game became his playground, his blank canvas. So first thing he does, he renames the team the Savannah Bananas. Many people hated the name, but you couldn't ignore it. It was a bold rebrand. And in fact, Jesse rebranded himself. Today, Jesse shows up at every game in a bright yellow tuxedo with a bright yellow Curious George hat. He's got 7 of them, one for every day of the week. Well, Jesse didn't have a lot of resources. He sold everything he owned. Jesse and his wife slept on an air mattress in the stadium for like a year as they were trying to get the team going. But that's exactly what they did. They studied every aspect of the game, which historically was pretty rigorous. Like, here's exactly what you can and can't do in baseball. And maybe you feel the same way. Here's what you can and can't do in finance. But here's what ended up happening. Jesse studied the game and realized that many times fans were bored during the slow periods, like in between innings. So he trained his team to do choreographed dance routines to blaring pop music in between every inning. Jesse is constantly running experiments and constantly injecting little acts of creativity. For example, the first few games of the season, their jerseys have green on them because they're not quite ripe yet. The bananas are not yet ripe. Sometimes they show up to play wearing kilts. Other times they show up to play wearing tutus. So Jesse challenged all the norms. One example of that is many times in sporting events, you have scantily clad women wearing little bikinis, objectified as dancers to cheer on the team. So in contrast, Jesse has the Savannah Nanas, a senior citizen troupe of dancers, again, cheering on the team. Not to be sexist, he also has the dad bod cheerleading squad to make sure that the men get in the game as well. Again, they really had some fun. Every aspect is different. I'm sure you've seen the Lion King movie where they hold up Simba and blare the circle of life. Well, before every game, they have a banana baby ceremony where, again, they blast the Simba music. Everyone has fun. People show up a couple hours before every game to a marching band parade, and they stay several hours after the game, dancing late into the night. Now people come from all over the world flying into Savannah, Georgia as their destination just to come to these crazy games. It's not just in the field, too. They've got 1.2 million TikTok followers, which is 200,000 more than the most followed Major League Baseball team. And before long, people fell in love. They start showing up dressed as bananas. There's not a day that goes by where someone doesn't walk up to Jesse and proudly display their brand new Savannah Bananas tattoo. And there Jesse is cheering everybody on, making sure everyone's having a great time. Well, before long, the stadium fills up. Jesse has now sold out all 4,000 seats for the last 100 games. And in fact, there's a waiting list several thousand people long to get season tickets. Jesse didn't even focus on the baseball. They focused on the fan experience. But because there was so much energy and momentum, the team started playing better. And he's now led the team not to 1, but to 2 league championships. In fact, he's not only the championship on the team, he's got the #1 revenue team in the league and the #1 profit team in the league. My point is this. In baseball, there was a set way of doing things. Jesse broke the mold, injected some creativity, and that carried the day. So as we look at our work, especially in these changing times, especially in periods of volatility and change, maybe like Jesse, we can inject some everyday creativity to make a difference and ultimately to drive success. I've been a bit on this mission recently of helping everyday people become everyday innovators. Too often we think the word innovation is out of our reach. We can't be innovative. We're the CFO. That's for the CEO. That's for someone wearing a lab coat or someone wearing a hoodie. But my premise is that we can all be creative. It's not a members-only club for the exclusive elite. Normal people like you and me can harness our incredible gift that we all have of human creativity and deploy it in thoughtful ways. Not silly ways. No one's suggesting you draw on the walls with purple crayons. But we can do this in a way that's meaningful to our business. Inventive thinking, creative problem solving, our ability to lead and win and soar. So as mentioned in the book, I set out to kind of decode the creative process. I wanted to see what are the habits and mindsets and tactics of the most innovative people on the planet. So I interviewed CEOs, billionaires, celebrity entrepreneurs, Grammy award-winning musicians, and lots of normal people like Jesse Cole, who are just doing cool stuff. Let me give you another example of a big little breakthrough in action. Oh, just real quickly, the reason I like them, I think of them as micro innovations, these little daily acts of creativity. First of all, they're way less risky than the swing for the fences counterparts. They're way more accessible. We can all be everyday innovators. These small wins add up to big wins. And while we're doing practice on the little creative ideas, we're building critical skills. So to me, it's just a way more pragmatic approach to thinking about creativity and innovation as a manageable asset, the same way we would think about inventories or supplies or raw materials. So anyway, another example for you. Imagine we all took a field trip. We went to London, England. We're walking around London, enjoying the beautiful architecture. Everything's going great until we look down and see this. Turns out that cigarette butt litter is a common occurrence, not only in London, but in the entire world. This is one of those pesky problems that just doesn't seem to get fixed. Enter Trewin Restorick. Trewin is another weird dude that I interviewed for the book. He's not a celebrity, he's not a billionaire, doesn't have 14 PhDs, he's a normal person. But Trewin decided to use his creativity to take a bite out of the cigarette butt issue. He ends up inventing something called the ballot bin, which encourages smokers to vote with their butts. Simple two-part question. Favorite food, hamburger or pizza? Mine is pizza, so I would simply insert my cigarette butt into the receptacle, got a little bar chart, shows me the real-time results. And you can customize these in any two-part question. I've seen some serious ones and some funny ones. I saw one that said Trump's hair, real or fake. It was kind of funny. And but what ended up happening is the simple, low-tech, low-cost solution that didn't require $1 billion, that didn't require regulatory approval. It worked. When ballot bins are installed, they reduce cigarette litter by 80%. Trewin went on to start a company. He's now in 27 countries around the world, making a real meaningful difference. So the reason I wanted to share this story is when we look at Elon Musk launching rocket ships, we say good for Elon Musk, but it's hard for us to see ourselves. Yet when we look at Trewin and his ballot bin, we say any one of us could have come up with that idea. And if we have those ideas floating around, isn't it our responsibility to bring them to the surface and put them to use for the advancement of our businesses and our families and our communities? You might be thinking, why now? Why is it so important to get creative right now? One thing that the COVID crisis has told us is that we can no longer simply rely on the models of the past and expect the same results. Today, we live in a world of dizzying speed, exponential complexity, and ruthless competition. And so the one thing that can't be outsourced or automated, our one source of sustainable success is what it's always been, which is human creativity, which I believe can be applied to every single role, every single box on the org chart. Crucially, we came to this event, and thanks so much for Withum for putting this together, but I would say that the edge that we're looking for might be inside all of us right now. Instead of thinking of creating something new, what if we can unlock something that's already there? What if we can tap into dormant creative capacity in order to move our organizations forward? So today I wanted to share some ideas from the book. Again, I studied the mindsets and tactics and habits of some amazing people, and I really started to see some common patterns, common approaches, common mindsets of the most innovative people. So I thought I would frame our discussion today around 5 big ideas, the 5 core mindsets of everyday innovators. The good news is these are portable. You don't need capital or years of study. You can put them to use immediately. Many of them are counterintuitive. They're the opposite of what we've been taught, but they can create a wildly effective impact for us all when we embrace them. So together, let's dive in and take a look at the 5 core mindsets of everyday innovators. Mindset number 1, start before you're ready. Many of us, we see an opportunity or a challenge and we wait. We wait for permission or a directive. We wait for the ideal conditions or maybe a perfect game plan. But there's a real risk in waiting. And the risk is that we might lose the opportunity altogether, or at best, we give up our head start. The best innovators do the opposite. They see that opportunity, even though they have no idea the route to the finish line, they start anyway. they recognize they're going to need to find their way in stream. They're going to have to course correct and pivot, adapt to changing conditions, but they don't give up the head start advantage. They start before they're ready. One example of that began in this crowded cafe. A woman named Trina Spear sat down with a good friend of hers who worked at the hospital across the street. Trina couldn't take her eyes off of her friends, not just her friend, but her friend's clothes. Her friend was wearing those medical scrubs that we've seen for years. They're itchy and uncomfortable and sort of limply hanging off of her friend's body with a big tag advertising for the world to see her friend's size. Well, Trina starts asking questions. Oh, it turns out that the medical professionals have to buy their own scrubs, generally at a medical supply store. And it's like a running joke how terrible these scrubs look and feel. Well, Trina starts before she's ready. She grabs her close friend, Heather Hassan, and together in their apartment, they start mail ordering fabric, stitching it together. They said, wait a minute, if there could be comfortable and fashionable athletic wear like Lululemon, why can't there be the Lululemon of medical scrubs? So what they did is fascinating. They actually started stitching these things together. They would show up in the parking lot at hospitals during shift changes. They'd offer free coffee to the healthcare workers, because who doesn't want free coffee? And they themselves were wearing the scrubs. People said, wow, you look great. Where did you get those? So Trina and Heather started selling their scrubs out of the back of their car. They didn't wait till they had a game plan that was perfect. They didn't raise billions of dollars in capital. They started before they were ready. And their product eventually became known as FIGS, F-I-G-S. FIGS are the Lululemon of medical scrubs. They're comfortable, they look great, they're antimicrobial, they have double zippered pockets. Everything a medical professional wants to look and perform at their best. They come in every size and shape for all types of different types of medical healthcare professionals. And the result was stunning. Only 6 years after they were selling clothes out of the parking lot, out of the trunk of their car, this last year, Trina and Heather took the company public with an initial IPO valuation of $6.8 billion. I'm quite convinced that if they waited for 5 years to perfect something in the lab or raising a bunch of capital, they would have never gotten there. Someone else would have beaten them to it. But because they embraced this principle, start before you're ready, and they let their creativity and innovation lead the way, they were able to enjoy a remarkable outcome. Which brings us to our second core mindset of everyday innovators. Mindset number 2, break it to fix it. How many times have we heard that phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Who invented that phrase? That's a terrible piece of advice. Why would you wait until a system or a process reaches a breaking point before getting on with an upgrade? The best of the best ignore that advice, and they do the opposite. They challenge head-on systems, processes that might be working just fine on the surface. They rip them all apart and look for ways to add creativity to come up with something better. They proactively break it in order to fix it. I learned recently that competitive swimming, well, there's a standard when it comes to swimsuits. The smaller and smoother, the faster. That's the prevailing wisdom in the swimsuit industry. That's why we have Speedos. Well, speaking of Speedos, a woman named Fiona Fairhurst took over as the head of innovation at Speedo. She herself was a championship swimmer and grew up in the smaller, smoother, faster mindset. Fiona was charged with coming up with a faster swimsuit. So what do? Smaller, smoother, faster. But Fiona instead decided to embrace this principle, break it in order to fix it. She started thinking, wait a minute, where else in the world do things swim fast? She started thinking about the ocean and eventually led her to sharks. If you look very carefully, you might notice that this shark is not wearing a Speedo. In fact, the shark's Speedo covers the whole shark. And on examination, it turns out that shark skin is not smooth at all. There's little ridges in the shark skin, which allows the shark to swim faster in the water. So Fiona became an innovator. She decided to use this principle, break it to fix it. She shattered the prevailing wisdom and came up with the Speedo fast skin bathing suit. As you can see, it covers the swimmer from head to toe. It's not smaller. And it's actually not smoother either. If you look really carefully, there's little ridges in it that she borrowed that idea from the sharks. The results, within 2 years of this swimsuit's launch, the swimsuit was responsible for winning 80% of all medals in championship swimming around the world. It became the new de facto standard. So it's important to me today to not only give you some big mindsets, but to give you some practical tools, specific techniques that you can put into use in the months and years to come. So our first peek in our innovation toolkit is exactly what Fiona did. I call it the borrowed idea. In other words, when you're looking to solve a problem or seize an opportunity, instead of getting caught up in the echo chamber of our profession, the notion is to look outside. You might say, where else? Where else in the world is something similar happening? When you examine things, it could be from an adjacent industry, it could be from nature, where Fiona came, it could be in sports or the arts or music. But the idea is looking for patterns outside of our profession, taking those ideas, bringing them back home as inspiration. That borrowed idea can create incredible results. Another example to tie it together for you. The Royal London Hospital was trying to reduce negative patient outcomes. In other words, they wanted patients to be healthier, of course. They realized that many of the biggest errors occurred in the hospital during periods of transition. For example, when a patient was being transferred from one part of the hospital to another, or during shift changes. Well, instead of studying other hospitals, these folks said, where else? Where else in the world do people have to deal with fast turn transitions with high levels of precision? So they didn't go to the hospital nearby. They went to the F1 racetrack. The leaders and healthcare professionals went over and spent time with the Ferrari F1 pit crew. They interviewed the team members, studied how they manage this choreography, how they can get the cars in and out so quickly and so efficiently. They took a number of those ideas, brought them back to the hospital, and it created a significant improvement in patient outcomes. Point is, they got their inspiration through the simple technique, the borrowed idea. Since we're on a roll, I'd like to share another peek at the innovation toolkit to give you another practical tool. This one is one of my all-time favorites. I simply call it the judo flip. The judo flip involves taking a careful examination of tradition and flipping it upside down. Here's how it works. Let's say you're trying to seize a new opportunity or tackle a tough challenge. Start by taking an inventory. How have you always done it in the past? What would traditional thinking in our field or profession, what would that look like? After you list out all the conventional approaches, draw a line down the page, and next to every entry, just simply ask, what's the polar opposite? What would it look like if I judo flipped it? Judo flipping is a wildly effective tool to find fresh, bold, creative ideas to even those difficult challenges. A fun example of this in action is a guy named Kevin Bull. Kevin was a normal person working a normal job, but Kevin had a dream. His dream was to become an America Ninja Warrior. Problem is, Kevin wasn't a professional athlete or an Olympian. Well, to his credit, hard work, persistence, he actually made it onto the show as an amateur. But then he was facing the challenge of his life. It was called Cannonball Alley. The whole thing was a test of his upper body strength. Kevin had to grab onto these balls that were hanging from the rafters and leap from one to the next to the next. 16 of the world's top athletes, 16 contestants went before Kevin. Every one of them failed. Now it's Kevin's turn. What's he possibly going to do? He knew a traditional approach wasn't going to work. He knew he didn't have the upper body strength of those that failed before him. So Kevin had to break it in order to fix it. Kevin had to give it a judo flip. Together, let's check out exactly what Kevin did.
Kevin Bull, may the force be with you, because he is going to need it.
You can hear the other finalists cheering him on. Such camaraderie in this sport. They love to see success, even sometimes at the expense of their own fortunes.
I think what that is real respect for this course.
A course that's been unbeatable so far tonight. He is propelling himself right up the salmon ladder. Oh, a little uneven. You can see a lot of movement in his body. Good. Now, Bull ready to take on the dreaded Cannonball Alley. And by touching that first cannonball, Kevin Bull is in. He's going to Vegas.
If I'm Kevin Bull here, I'm stealing a page out of Thaddeus Robeck's book, and I'm hugging the cannonballs.
With that, oh, look at this. A new approach. Getting both legs over it. Is he going to go inverted?
Wow.
I like it. Thinking outside the box, and sometimes it takes a rookie to do that. Look at this!
Oh.
He's hanging upside down. I love it! He's going to go for the dismount upside down and down. That's what I'm talking about. The first man to complete the Cannonball Alley Cannonball.
Man, are you kidding me?
Wow, the crowd erupts.
Are you kidding me?
What an effort. David Campbell's words prove prophetic. Kevin Bull is the real deal. The first man to survive Cannonball Alley. He has punched his ticket to Mount Midoriyama, but he is not done.
So there you go. Kevin didn't win by working longer hours or trying harder. Kevin won by embracing this principle, break it in order to fix it. Judo flip to new possibilities. This brings us to our third core mindset of everyday innovators. Mindset number 3, use every drop of toothpaste. My CFO friends on the call will certainly appreciate this because it's around doing more with less, getting scrappy, being very thoughtful about the resources at hand and using our creativity to fill in any other missing gaps. It's using resourcefulness and being inventive as opposed to just relying on external resources. So to me, the poster child of this particular principle has to be this guy. I'm sure you remember MacGyver. I loved him. I mean, he didn't have any superpowers. He couldn't fly, he had no x-ray vision. He didn't carry a gun. MacGyver carried a roll of duct tape and a paperclip. But he was always managed to save the day and get out of a jam. It's funny, MacGyver was so popular, it's now part of the English language. The Oxford Dictionary defines MacGyvering as a verb to make or repair something in an improvised or inventive way, making use of whatever items are at hand. I like that definition, but there's one I like even more. I prefer the Urban Dictionary definition, which they call a MacGyver a noun, someone who could jumpstart a truck with a cactus. Point being, why can't we bring our inner MacGyver to the job? We don't have to throw up our arms in defeat when we are lacking external resources. People saying necessity is the mother of invention. It plays itself out exactly like this every day. Let's use our creativity to fill in those gaps. Let's use every drop of toothpaste. An example of that is a dear friend of mine named Cully Sweeney. Cully and I were both born in the city of Detroit, but that's where our paths differed. I grew up in a stable household. Cully had a very rough upbringing, grew up below the poverty line, terrible school environment, ended up getting into some trouble. So he, over time, became an honest tax-paying citizen. He became a successful guy, but instead of leaving this rough area of Detroit, he decided to stay and be part of the solution to help inspire other at-risk kids like himself to enjoy a better future, a better life. So Cully started something called the Downtown Boxing Gym. It looks like an athletic facility, but really it's an educational facility. Boxing is just the lure to get the kids in the door, but they're not allowed to train in the ring until they spend a couple hours a day working with an academic coach. They're taught life skills and they're taught that they can take agency of their own future. Cully just believed that every kid deserved a fighting chance. Now, Cully started this program with no capital, no resources. Now it looks pretty nice because over time he's been able to get some grants, but at the time, no benefactors, nothing. He took over a falling apart factory where he started this program. But here's the remarkable part. Cully used his creativity. He used every drop of toothpaste to really make a difference. The high school graduation rate in the zip code where this gym is today in Detroit, Michigan, is only 37%. The kids that go through Cully's program, the high school graduation rate, 100%. 100% for 10 years in a row. Cully took on a problem as intractable as at-risk kids in failing school systems and urban decay, and he didn't solve it by throwing more money at it. He solved it by throwing more creativity at it. And by the way, CNN named him one of their top 10 heroes, deservedly so. He's just a beautiful, remarkable person doing amazing things by leaning in to his gift of creativity. Okay, mindset number 4. This one's going to feel a little weird to you because the mindset number 4 is reach for weird. The idea is this: we tend to gravitate toward the tried and true. My suggestion, with great respect, let's challenge ourselves to go for those unexpected ideas, the oddball, unorthodox, even bizarre ideas, because those weird ideas are inside of us. Let's liberate them because weird can be a very effective strategy. Los Angeles, California, a billboard goes up. Your move, BMW, the entirely new Audi A4. I think this is one of those rhetorical questions. I mean, the whole point here, no way could BMW respond. Only problem for Audi is that BMW is an innovative company. BMW knows how to reach for weird. Within only 1 week, in the identical sightline to this billboard, BMW fired back with this. I don't think that's what Audi was hoping for. Well, now it's Audi's turn. What are they going to do? They could call the lawyers, they could file a complaint, or they could also reach for weird. 2 days later, very next billboard, Audi responds, "Your pawn is no match for our king. Take that." Well, this launched the billboard wars of LA. Both companies kept running more and more billboards trying to outdo one another. And frankly, both companies won because they both knew how to reach for weird. And it did get pretty weird over time. How about this one? Little seaside town in Iceland was facing a problem. Traffic incidents involving pedestrians were up 41% over the last 10 years. It's not so good when cars are hitting people. So what do? Obvious approach: install expensive traffic lights, issue more fines, hire more police officers. Or you could reach for weird. Here's what they did. They painted the crosswalk as an optical illusion. So as you drive your car up, it looks like these concrete slabs are floating 3 feet in the air. There's no way you're going to barrel through that intersection. Traffic incidents dropped dramatically, and they had some fun taking selfies. How about this one? Children's Hospital, University of Pittsburgh. Who are their customers? Sick kids and their families. The leaders of the hospital, they wanted to create a better experience for those kids. The obvious approach may be softer pillows. The reach for weird approach, these are the window washers. So now you got Batman and Superman cleaning the windows, and by the way, no productivity was lost. They had to clean the windows anyway. But the difference is it became a game changer for those kids. It takes the attention away from the medical care. The kids look forward to it for days. So in this simple example, you might say, yeah, that didn't make $1 billion, but you know what? It made a difference. This is what a big little breakthrough is all about. It's a small act of everyday creativity that doesn't break the bank, but again, drives meaningful impact and results. This brings us to our fifth and final big idea today. I will say that we are going to be taking questions. I'll be excited to hear your questions. So if anything's on your mind, type it into the chat window for us. And Bill and I are going to have a lovely conversation answering the questions that are on your mind. So don't forget to put questions in the chat window, and I'll be excited to hear what you have to say. Okay, mindset number 5. Fall 7 times, stand 8. I borrowed the phrase from a Japanese proverb, but here's the concept. It's the notion, first of all, that mistakes and setbacks are part of the innovation process. We're all going to stumble. If we're not falling down from time to time, we're probably not trying hard enough. That's just part of the process. If we want to enjoy innovation, we're going to have to tolerate some failure along the way. Second of all, though, it's not just dogged persistence. It's the fusion of creativity and resilience. In other words, when you have that inevitable setback, don't just do the same thing again and again and again, expecting different results, but rather you get back after it in a slightly different way. Is there a little creative twist or a different angle that you can approach in order to ultimately become the victorious person? Fall 7 times, stand 8. A fun example of this principle comes from my hometown of Detroit. About 20 miles north of downtown Detroit is a little suburb called Troy, Michigan, about 150,000 residents. Well, the library in Troy, Michigan was facing a problem. It was a budget crisis that was so bad, they were about to shut this library down for good. Of course, the leaders didn't want that to happen to their community. They managed to get a millage proposal on an upcoming ballot. They proposed a small increase in property tax to save the library. Unfortunately, though, here's what happens next. Well-organized, well-funded national groups descend on Troy, Michigan. And they change the conversation from save our library to no new taxes. At this point, the library was facing certain defeat. They're outfunded, they're out-organized, they're running out of time. Their backs were against the wall. And I'm sure we've all had a situation like that, where we've had some struggle and it seems impossible to eventually win. But the folks at the library embraced this principle. Fall 7 times, stand 8. They got back after it with more creativity. Here's a quick video to show exactly what they did.
So we decided to form a group of our own and started planting signs around town that said, "Vote to close the library August 2nd, book burning party August 5th. The idea of book burning is bad enough, but gleefully making it a party, well, that angered people enough to send them to our Facebook page.
You people are sick.
This is disgusting. Reject the wackos. Vote yes.
But we didn't stop there. We created videos.
Imagine this times 200,000. How cool is that?
Posted on Twitter.
The Troy Library might be short on money, but it has books to burn.
Created items for sale.
A book bag. How ironic.
We placed newspaper ads, created check-ins, posted flyers, and lined up entertainment.
You guys are booking a band?
People became enraged.
Why would you burn books, idiots?
This is horrible.
Cheap imbeciles.
What the is this world coming to?
We should burn your signs instead.
Complete and total
This
idiots.
is really
Shut this
just
page down.
pathetic.
Jerks.
They posted their own links, shared with friends, debated the merits of libraries and the audacity of burning books. The conversation spread from Facebook to city council meetings, from newspapers to TV. It grew from local to national, even international news. Once it reached a fevered pitch, we revealed the true intent of our campaign. A vote against the library is like a vote to burn books. And people started posting, tweeting, and reporting all over again. In the end, we had changed the conversation completely.
How great is that? Well, the vote comes down. Voter turnout was 400% higher than expected. That beautiful library won by a landslide. Still there today. Here's a picture of the team taking a victory lap. So again, the point is when we have that inevitable struggle, let's jump back after it with more creativity, and ultimately we have a much better shot of winning the day. Now, many people ask me all the time, what's the biggest blocker of creative output? It's not natural talent. All of us are hardwired to be creative. That's our natural state as human beings. The biggest blocker is fear. So as leaders, if we want to really liberate the creativity within our organizations, we have to remove the fear. Fear and creativity cannot coexist. So the more we can make a safe environment for people to be creative, the more innovation we will enjoy. There's an organizational psychologist in Sweden, in fact, that wanted to showcase the critical role that failure plays in the process of creativity. So we actually created a museum for it. Welcome to the Museum of Failure. Let's take a peek inside. Here's one. I'm sure we've all had flavor or vitamin enhanced water. I'm drinking some right now. Well, some inventor decided that your pets would probably like the same thing. So it created Thirsty Cat and Thirsty Dog. It comes in tangy fish and crispy beef flavor. And it's a surprise to no one other than this inventor, perhaps. This disgusting brown liquid that was overpriced, not a commercial success. How about this one? I think appetite suppressant candy is a good idea, but perhaps they blew it on the name. Can you imagine? Hey, honey, when you're out at the market, can you grab me a couple packs of AIDS? Yeah, not a big hit. But this next one has to be my all-time favorite. It's called the Euro Club. It's for the golfer that simply can't hold it for 9 holes. Yep, that's right. It's a urinal disguised as a golf club. Has a little screw on top, privacy towel, fits conveniently in your golf bag. And again, not a big winner, although in a strange twist of fate, it's still available online as a gag gift. Here's the thing. When we look at these inventors who gave it their best shot, we extend compassion. But when we screw something up ourselves or one of our team members do, we do no such thing. Instead of wallowing in self-pity and regret and being ashamed, let's just recognize that setbacks are part of the deal. Let's look at them as data instead of judgment. Let's give ourselves a little compassion like the folks at the museum here do. And we're going to allow ourselves to, again, in the best possible way to get back after it and eventually win. Okay, we've covered 5 big ideas today. I will do a quick recap and then turn it over to you to see whatever questions are on your mind. Don't forget to type those questions in the chat window. Okay, we talked number 1, start before you're ready. The notion of when you see a challenge or opportunity, don't wait for perfection, just get started. Find your way as you begin and course correct and pivot and adapt as needed, but start before you're ready. We talked about the idea of break it to fix it. Instead of sitting around and saying, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, taking the opposite approach. Using the borrowed idea or the judo flip as a technique to challenge conventional wisdom, flip it upside down and enjoy better outcomes. We talked about the idea of using every drop of toothpaste, being scrappy and resourceful, using our inner MacGyver to get the job done. We covered the notion of reach for weird. And sure, this is uncomfortable. We're financial professionals, but you know what? There is a real opportunity here because those unexpected, unorthodox approaches can be the most powerful ones we can discover. And finally, when we have the inevitable setbacks, let's just recognize it for what it is, an important part of the process. Let's learn from it, let's pivot, and let's use our creativity to fight back and ultimately win, just like they did at the library in Troy, Michigan. So if I convince you of one thing here today, perhaps it's this. When we began, maybe you thought that this, Elon Musk, was the face of innovation. But I hope that I've convinced you that these are the faces of innovation. And frankly, we are the faces of innovation. Innovation is not a members-only club, it's universal, it's democratized. Every one of us can become an everyday innovator when we embrace these important mindsets. And to get you started, I put something together for you. It's totally free, it's not a sales pitch. But if you check out biglittlebreakthroughs.com, there's a whole host of resources for you. There's a free assessment tool, feel free to use it with your teams. There's a quick start guide, there's warm-up exercises, brainstorming techniques, downloadable worksheets, and a whole bunch more. It does require a secret code, which I made for you today, Withum. So check out biglittlebreakthroughs.com. Don't forget to use the secret code Withum, and make sure that you can use this as an ongoing resource as you and your colleagues start to build this mindset and ultimately an army of everyday innovators. So as we say goodbye and I take your questions, I just want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Now that these ideas are fresh in your mind, see in the next 7 days if you can uncover a single big little breakthrough, just one. Don't worry about executing it or funding it. All I want you to do is think of one little idea in the next 7 days. Here's what's going to happen. Ideas are contagious. One idea becomes 4 ideas, becomes 11 ideas. And before long, you will awaken this natural part of who you are. Your natural innate ability to be a creative person starts to surface and spreads. So if you give yourself the permission to just start with one idea this week, you create momentum, and that momentum can become unstoppable. You know, as Bill said, we are living in changing times. Obviously, COVID was an accelerant, but let's not forget that we're also living in times of beautiful opportunity. And we can seize that opportunity, I believe, by embracing these mindsets and by moving forward one big little breakthrough at a time. Thank you so much, and I'm excited to answer any questions that are on your mind.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate your comments. I really enjoy your 5 points. Probably the one I like the most is use every drop of toothpaste, and that goes back to myself being a cheap CPA. So we don't have any questions yet, but you know, I have a couple here. You know, we've been on our innovation journey here at Withum, and one of the things that we find is you know, you put the clarion call out. Hey, let's innovate. Give me some ideas. Let's think about how we can provide services better to clients. Let's see how we can provide more service to the clients. Let's see how we can do our back office better. And then all of a sudden you get a million ideas come in. How do you manage that? What do you do? How do you narrow the funnel down to actionable items?
Excellent question. Well, first of all, I'm glad to hear that we've got a lot of ideas coming in, because sometimes we fall into that silver bullet trap. So you say, hey, I want ideas, and people hold their ideas back because it doesn't solve everything all at once. So I'm glad to hear that you're getting lots of ideas. You know, most people, they'll miss an important step in the process of innovation. They think it goes like this: come up with an idea, roll it out globally. This missing step is experimentation. And so the question that you're asking here is, what do we do with those ideas and put them in action? Instead of just choosing the best one you think and rolling it out to every client, what you might do is start to narrow the field and say, okay, let's look at the 10 best ideas. When you look at a couple simple metrics, you know, cost to market, risk factor, possible impact, et cetera. And instead of having one person or a group of people have to choose the best one, it's all around rapid experimentation. In other words, how fast and cheap can you test those ideas? So I'm talking about crude, low fidelity tests, fixed time, fixed money. So instead of seeing an idea and saying, oh, I better roll this out to all my clients, what if you tried it in a manual way, non-automated, with one client on a Tuesday afternoon? and see what the data shows. If the idea shows promise, just double the size of that experiment. If it doesn't, release the idea and move on to the next one. So instead of these, I got to choose the best idea and make sure it's perfect, just this mindset of let's run the experiment. And as leaders, I think we should be constantly running little experiments all the time, recognizing that 80% of them will fail, get rid of them quick, and then just doubling down on the ones that show promise, such that by the time you bring an idea to market, you've extracted the majority of the risk. Just because I'm a practical person, I'll give you one other quick technique. I'm sure on your phone, Bill, you have a to-do list. I do. Well, why not keep a second list, a to-test list? Keeping a running to-test list means that as people in your firm come up with ideas, just throw them on the to-test list. You don't have to overthink it, just put it on the to-test list. And then maybe once a month, we sit down as a group and say, what are the items that we're going to test as a firm? So just embracing the notion of rapid experimentation on a regular basis can de-risk the process and help you choose the best ideas and ultimately put those best ideas into action.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh.
Sure.
We do have a question that's coming from the audience. It might be a bit narrow, but let's throw it out there just out of respect for someone that took the opportunity to ask the question. And the question is, as a financial planner, is there a way to judo flip the planning process?
Love the question, and thank you for asking. I'm confident there is. By the way, my dad was a CFA, so I grew up around financial planning professionals. Yeah, so I think what we do is we start by taking a look at how do we normally run the financial planning process, and maybe we say, okay, what's your timeline? What's your risk tolerance? What's your overall current existing portfolio? What's the income stream, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe what we do is we say, okay, if we couldn't ask any of those questions, what would we ask instead? Or maybe we start, instead of, we reverse engineer it. Instead of doing the forward-thinking approach, we work backwards. It's hard for me because I'm not a financial professional to tell you the specific tactics, but the whole notion of a judo flip is taking a careful inventory, an audit, if you will. You audit what does conventional wisdom dictate, and then you just ask that question, what's the opposite? For example, if I was running a CFA firm, I would say, well, how do all the CFA professionals generally show up? And they all wear the same Windsor knots and they have the same mahogany desks. So I would say, well, what would the opposite look like? Maybe you come into your office and it looks like a startup and there's people wearing black turtlenecks instead. So whether it's a fashion statement or whether it's the actual mechanics of the work, the point is really confront and take a look at what its conventional wisdom suggests, and then just challenge yourself to say, what would the polar opposite be?
Thanks. One of the last things you talked about, Josh, is fear. You know, as the leader of this great firm for many years, I think about, you know, we pick a strategy and, you know, we don't know for sometimes 5 years whether it actually works. How do you deal with that? I mean, do you have any good things we could do as leaders or as finance executives to help us pick an innovative strategy, but then, you know, not necessarily be married to it or understand how we need to pivot so that we can get over that fear?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. One is, you know, we often think of a strategy as that once it's set, it's locked, you know, it's chiseled in stone. So maybe it's a directional strategy rather than a hardline strategy. And maybe there's milestones. That's a lot of times what we do when you're working on like a tech startup. Just say, okay, here's our directional strategy, but every 60 days, we're going to examine it on a number of predetermined factors and say, okay, do we need to pivot? Do we need to course correct? It's like a smoke detector system. Are we starting to get off a little bit? Can we move back toward the center? Or maybe the world changes around us. Maybe there's a new competitive threat. So rather than having tunnel vision and being so focused on a particular strategy, we're willing to be adaptive in real time. You know, there's a great quote that I've always loved that we should fall in love with the problem, not the solution. In other words, as solution-oriented professionals, we might say, we quickly leap to a solution, but then we become fixated on that particular solution, as opposed to being more focused on the problem that we're trying to solve. Could be firm growth, could be the way that we care for clients, and being willing to let go of one solution in favor of a new one as you're moving things down the field. So I think it's a little bit of less functional fixedness and more focus on being adaptive in real time. Real quick too, just back on your question around fear, the best tool that we have as leaders to create a safe environment are rituals and rewards. Rituals and rewards that support the creative process. I'll just share one that's really funny. So that ballot bin guy that I shared with you, Trevin Restrick, the guy with the yellow ballot bins from London. I asked him that question. I said, you've got a really elegant solution. It's working. How do you keep your team being innovators? Here's what he said. He said, every Friday, they have F up Fridays. He says the whole word. I'll just be polite. But F up Fridays go like this. He has a firm-wide company brown bag lunch. And one by one, each person has to stand up and proudly share what they F'd up that week and what they learned from it. Inevitably, they get to somebody that didn't F something up, and they're like, well, why not? What are you going to try next week? So just think for a minute about what the simple zero-cost ritual does, the message that it sends to that team, that being an innovator is part of your job, that it's a core part of your job responsibility to push the creative boundaries, that we understand innovation is going to have some setbacks. And when you screw something up, we have your back. And we will celebrate you in failure as much as in success. So again, just that simple little ritual, you're welcome to borrow it, of course, but whether you do that or something else of your own, the more that you can create these rituals and rewards around the desired action of creative freedom, the more innovation we will enjoy.
Thank you, Josh. That was great, and great suggestion, although I think F Up Fridays might cause a little problem with our talent team and our HR department, but it's an excellent idea, and maybe we'll figure out a way to come up with something along similar lines. So we are at the end of our time, Josh, and I can't thank you enough for talking to our clients and friends. I always find time with you to be very, very valuable, and it always makes me think differently about the world and about strategy and what we need to do next. So thank you very much, and I greatly appreciate it. I don't know if you have anything final to say, but I greatly appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you so much, Bun. It's an honor to contribute. Thanks to everybody for your attention, and I really hope that we can. If you had another valuable resource, you had an oil well that you had access to, you'd want to tap it. And if you think about all human beings walking around with dormant creative capacity, let's tap it. Let's bring it to the surface and leverage it as a competitive advantage. So thanks for being open-minded here today, and I really wish you all the best. Again, one big little breakthrough at a time.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh.
Cheers.